only going to take about I'm only going to take about 2 or 3 minutes here at the beginning just to define some terms so we're all on the same page, introduce what the software is, and then we'll spend the entire rest of the time in the software. We'll be going through some scenarios, painting some pictures, answering questions, but bear with me for a couple minutes here just to make sure we're all on the same page. But what we're talking about today is a solution we call Infor Configure Price Quote, abbreviated CPQ. It is designed through various means to increase your sales, reduce your costs, and differentiate your brand. There's great business reasons behind what this tool can do. Any software that's in the marketplace that allows you to configure something to the customer specifications, get a price calculated on that something, and then get a quote put together for that something is considered CPQ software. We do adhere to that market definition, but we take it a little bit further. Configuration can certainly happen in your products, but also can go to your systems and services. Pricing doesn't just have to be one number that's sold to the customer, but can include other details like your costs, your margins, etc. Quoting doesn't happen between a buyer and a seller. It happens across multiple channels oftentimes. And then ultimately, when that buyer decides they want to make that purchase, you have to be able to fulfill that quote, fulfill the order. So we take it all the way across the scenario, and we're going to show that happening today. There are different components or parts of the solution that make this happen. We have the configurator at the top of the stack, easy configuration and pricing of products. But since configuration doesn't happen in a vacuum, it happens in the context of quoting. We have a quote and multi-channel quoting and ordering component. Images, drawings, and models so you can see what you're ordering. Proposals so you can put those things in the hands of the buyer. And anytime, anywhere access because it's web-based. To look at those in a little bit more detail, here is a picture of something being configured, in this case a forklift. You can see pictures of it. You can see your questions being asked on the left side. We'll be configuring some windows today in particular.
Forklifts are in the fenestration business, right?
They are very good at defenestration. So they break windows very easily. We have this forklift now in a quote because, like I said, they don't usually happen in a vacuum. We'll show quoting today. Being able to see what the thing is that you're configuring is very helpful. We have the ability to do that with either static pictures, photo rendering, or even 2D and 3D CAD. We're going to show some 2D CAD in particular today. Compelling proposals, being able to make something that is professional, concise, accurate, customized to that particular quote and customer, and get that in their hands so they can make their purchasing decision. And then we say anytime, anywhere access. The solution I'm showing today is cloud-based. It is not something that is pulled down to the workstation. It's not something that you need to install to get it to work. So as long as you can access the cloud or access the internet, you can use this whether you're on a desktop, laptop, or even a smart device. And there's me walking off into the sunset. Any questions? We good?
We're good.
Let's go look at the software. Okay. Confirm again. I'm looking at a screen that says up here Tim's dashboard. Everybody with me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay. Here's the scenario. I am going to play the role of one of your dealerships. You call them dealerships or distributors or field reps? What's your favorite term?
Field reps.
Field reps. I'm going to play the role of one of your...
Sure, field reps is great.
Not dealers.
Field rep. Not dealers? Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Not
but I'm
yet,
somebody who I'm out and about. I'm doing things that are going to bring business to the company. I need to be able to create quotes. And here's my scenario that Dan is my customer. Dan has approached me and said he needs to put together a quote for some product, for some windows. And what can I do for him? Well, he has some dimensions he needs to give me, and he wants to know price. So I have to do some work here to get this quote put together for Dan. I'm starting off in a place that's my dashboard homepage, where I can go into our Infor family of products and do some work. And our focus today is not necessarily this whole big suite of products. I'm going to focus very specifically on CPQ, but we got to start somewhere. And this homepage allows me to do some collaborative work. It's a launching place where I can look at my tasks, maybe make some notes, look at documents and posts, etc. I can scroll down and see that there's other things like workflow processes. Everybody's dashboard can look different. You can make it look, you can share dashboards, etc. It's a starting place. I'm going to navigate through my application picker to a tool called Enterprise Quoting, which is where I can put quotes together. When I do that, I'm on a screen where I can navigate along down here on the left side, looking at my product catalog or dealers or quotes or orders, etc. It happens to be showing me some quotes that have been created by myself or my colleagues in the past. They're represented by these cards. This is called our card view. Dan says he's wanting to build a quote. I'm going to come back and navigate through this a little later. Dan's impatient. He wants his quote. He wants it quick. I'm going to come up here where it says new quote and start that process immediately. It begins a quoting process. Generated a new quote. Shows me a blank screen where I can put the details of my quote. You can see customer is not yet selected. I have no line items. I have no price yet. No header details. It's a fresh new quote. I don't need to navigate for a little while, so I'm going to slide the navigator off to the left side. We need to get Dan's customer information in here, so I'm going to click Select Customer and get that information put into this quote. As I scroll down, I can see here's a list of a bunch of customers, and I happen to know that Dan works for Concept Systems Incorporated, and that's who needs some. That's who he's working with today. Often people have a question about where that customer information came from. I'm going to pause for a second. Any questions about how I got that customer in there?
Sure.
Where that data came from?
CloudSuite itself, or?
It can come from CloudSuite, yes. It can also come from if you have a CRM, a custom CRM tool, or it can be standalone. If I, as a field rep, if Dan just walked in my door today and he's not in the system, I can go add Dan right away into my customer list. So a lot of different places that customer information can come from, but suffice to say, once I've selected it, it's now got that information in here. Concept Systems in apparently Albany, Oregon. And by the way, there's a contact here. It says Will Brown, but we're going to pretend it's Dan today. We got an idea about that. All right. Dan wants some windows in here, so I need to be able to go add products to this list of line items. I have two buttons that will help me do that, the product catalog and add items. If I know the item directly, I can click add items, just go get it and add it in here. But if I need to do a little shopping, I can click on product catalog and it'll help me find the right product for Dan. We have already built the structure, the backbone structure of a product catalog in our system. You guys would provide the name of the items you want in your catalog, pictures if that's relevant, and any categories that you want them to fit into. This is our example list of categories and some of our example products. Look at how I can narrow things down. If I want to go look for things in the building products category, I can click that category and it will only show me items that are in the building products space. Oops. I don't know what I did, but I reloaded the screen. All right. You can see that there's even other ways to filter it down. Dan wants some windows, so I'm going to go down here and filter it. I don't need to look at other things except for windows. When I click windows, it'll narrow it down and just show me some windows. And this is what he wants right here, this half vent below window. He wants one of those sliders that opens up some air at the bottom but has some grids, a nice picture window above it. That's what he wants. So I'm going to select that. And it says, oh, good. All right, I know what that is. This is a half vent below window. It's a popular style for contemporary homes. Sliders are typically used, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, before I can add this to the quote, I need to know, what size do you want? How many grids do you want? How do you want this what kind of glass do you want? So it's going to offer me the option to configure right from here in my code. I'm going to click configure and start the configuration process. As that's starting, let me pause for a second. Is this quoting process something that you're hoping to see, and is it relevant to our topic today, or am I off track?
No, I think we're good.
Are we doing okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, then I'm going to keep going. All right, so I have to configure this thing, this window, to Dan's specifications. So first of all, the configurator often typically looks like this, where there's a split screen here, where on the right side it might show me pictures or graphics or whatever like that as feedback to me, and on the left side are the questions I need to answer to get through all the requirements. So you can see that it's prompting for is this a rough or net opening? And I have a drop-down field that I can choose between rough or net. And it's asking me what are the widths, the rough dimensions of this in width and height. And you can see that as I hover over it, it says enter a size between 12 and 96 inches. And I can see a drop-down field here that's going to prompt me for anything between 12 up to 96 inches. In this case, 1/4 inch increments. I want to pick the biggest window I can build. And same thing with height. I have options.
And of course, those dimensions could be metric.
They can be metric. Yes, they can. They can also be fractions. Sometimes they want it to be, say, 96 and 3/8. You can have fractions in there as well.
Yeah, we're bilingual up here. We speak Canadian and American.
That's good. So you can see that it's going through. It's asking me now for my vent panel height, my vent panel width. Now, it prompts me here, do I want to put grids? It's drawn something for me over here. That's good. I have a general idea. Dan wants grids, so I better check mark the grids box. And it's going to say, all right, here's some grids. Wow, that's a lot of grids. The approximate light size, 9 inches. Maybe it doesn't need to be that tight. Maybe I can say 16, and it changes it out a little bit, makes it a little bit bigger grids. Do I want to show the dimensions on this thing? Sure, I do. Calculated or driven? Say calculated. It's going to start showing me the dimensions of the grids on the window.
What does calculated versus driven mean?
In this case, it's a nuance. Calculated is the rules of the configurator are calculating what these dimensions are going to be, as opposed to driven means that the CAD tool behind the scenes is calculating what these numbers should be.
I see. Thank you.
Yep. I choose calculated because when I choose driven, what I've seen, it doesn't round very well, and I don't think that looks as pretty.
But Tim, is that a 2D parametric model?
It is.
Okay. Didn't somebody say something about a DXF or a DWG?
Yes, they
somebody did.
Okay. Just checking.
Thank
This
you.
is a dynamically drawn 2D image. So if I change my parameters up here, it will change what's drawn over here. If I don't want my approximate light size to be 16, but maybe I want it to be 24, changing things to the best that it can within the parameters that I'm giving it. So it is a dynamically generated drawing, and I can have outputs from this drawing in the form of a JPEG, a DWG, other industry standards for 2D drawings can be generated straight from this now.
Do you sometimes have windows that are not rectangle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured so.
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
They sometimes have windows that are not rectangular?
Yes.
Sure. We can see. I'll show another example of that next.
Can the grids be manually modified? Like for instance, grids on the top but not on the bottom?
Yes. So the reason that I'm being asked these questions in this order and this picture is being rendered is because the person who built this model said that this is the way they wanted it to be. Ask this question first, ask this question next, ask this question next. If you want to have the question there that says, do you want grids on the top or the bottom, neither or both, then you ask those questions. And then, depending on what they answer, you decide where to show the grids.
It all boils down to how you set it up.
Oh,
Yes. Yes, that's right. So a forklift is going to have completely different questions than a window. The whole point, yeah, believe it or not. I know. Believe it or not,
Go
then
figure.
you guys will set up your rules for your product. And this is just our example of a window.
Your exact rules.
Your exact rules for your product. This is a platform. It's not we aren't going to give you a window. We're going to give you a platform to build your own window. I have another tab here that says common options, that if I go to the next tab, it's going to ask me some more questions. Well, what kind of frame type do I have here? Is it a vinyl frame, a pultrusion, or is it an aluminum frame? What kind of material is that going to be? How do I want the finish to look? What kind of glass do I want? And you can see that by challenging me for these questions, I'm getting a price up here, $1,752 for this nice big window. And depending on the options that I'm answering, the thickness of my glass, maybe the tempered or not, it can change the price of the product. And if I want to see how that's reflected, I can change, instead of looking at my picture, I can change over here and see the price breakdown that's being generated. The person who built this model wrote the rules that if they ask for tempered glass, add either $242 or probably it's a multiple of the area of the glass is being added to the overall price. That make sense?
Yeah, there's some type of formula in the background, right?
There's rules, and my intention is we will show those before the end of our session today.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let me just confirm, are we on for another 90 minutes, I think?
Well, I hope not.
What were we slotted for? 2 hours or an hour and a half, I forget.
The webinar says 2 hours, but if we're sooner than that, everyone will be happy.
Okay, I'll go faster. Not a problem.
We got the full 2 hours if we need, but if we don't, we don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we need the 2 hours, then we can take it. So I'll let you. We'll just see how she goes there.
All right, no problem. I'll try to keep it under 4 hours. So.
Perfect.
Great. We've got a picture. We've got a price. We've got a list of all the answers that were given all the way through the configuration at this point. And as I'm looking at this, I'm realizing, ooh, wait, I made a mistake. The actual width of the window is not 96. The width is a little different. I need to change that. Maybe I don't remember exactly where it was I gave that answer. I can click here where it says 96. And it takes me back to that tab and back to that question where I gave that answer. And let's say Dan has to tell me, actually, we meant it to be 86. So, I don't know, 86 and a quarter is close enough. It changes my window, changes it significantly, because now, since I took 10 inches off of there, it can't very well get 24 inches of grids into there. So I'm going to change this back down to 16 just to see what that looks like. Regardless, I can massage it. I can manipulate it. I can do what I want to it at any time. Are we good on that so far?
Yep.
I'm going to click the Finish button. Comes back out. I could either configure another one of these windows, or I'm going to go back to my items. Let's look at a window that isn't necessarily rectangular. This one. Here it is. I'm going to configure it. I'm going to have a different set of questions. A different picture to start off with. Let's say we're going to do our value options, our unit width. Again, I like big windows. I'm going to make these big. Unit height. How many locks we want. Here it's drawing it as a 3-pane casement window. So I want to put a transom panel on the top. Yes, I do. Let's make a vinyl transom panel. puts that up there. I have the flankers that I can modify. I'm going to put a grill type on there. Centers, the right one, the transom up here. What kind of transom type do I want? Let's say I want a half round transom. So it puts that up there at the top. It's just a different window model. It's asking me questions. I have different tabs. Doesn't have as many pictures as the previous one did. And this one doesn't show dimensions, but you kind of get the idea. Does that answer some questions? Does that help?
A little bit, yeah. And I assume
Okay.
the reason why it's not showing dimensions is that's the way you set it up.
That's right. That's right. The person who built this model, I think the focus for this customer was can it make a nice half circle on the top? They didn't care as much about the dimensions, so it just didn't get in the model.
Understood, thank you.
Yeah. I'll finish that one. I'm going to go back to my items one more time. We're going to pick on a different product this time. I'm going to take it off of the windows because I want this one. I want to actually look at this time the door. So this time I told it I want to configure a door. So of course it's got my description up here, etc. Instead of the configure button over here on the right side where it was when I was looking at the windows, it put it down a little bit lower, and it's got a couple other buttons here, as well as some fields here that are prompting me for like wood species, stain, and door style. I'm going to talk about those in a second. Let's configure the first one. I click configure. I'm going to launch the configurator for the door. What do we want here? Cherry door, hickory, maple, oak. We'll pick an oak door. Based upon the fact that I picked oak, and I can do either cider, natural, or some other special stain. If I had picked a different one, say hickory, maple we'll say, I have sable, natural, toffee. So there's filtering in here that depending on what I pick, other options can be provided. We'll do a nice
Those are
sable
rules,
colored maple.
right?
That's rules. That's right. That's your rules. Here's my construction. Is it under square stick? What's this? What do they call this? The profile cut. If I don't know what these what's a belection molding? What's that look like? What's a bevel, one step, quarter round? I can click here to view some pictures of what those cuts look like. Oh, that's what belection molding looks like. I like that. We'll take that. It's drawing my door for me over here. It's taking some default sizes that if I proceed to the dimensions, you can see that it's already picked a square panel, square top door that's 30 inches by 80 inches. And if I scroll down, I can see other dimensions for things like the stile width and the lock rail and the bottom rail and whatnot. So it's helping me build this door. I'm in good shape to prove that this is a nice, a real 2D image. If I want to change something, like let's say the stile width, which is these side rails that are 4 inches. Let's say Dan says that needs to be 6 inches. It widens those out to 6 inches. Say Dan says, I still want that wide. Let's make that 8 inches. Stops me and says, wait a minute. And it takes away my drawing. It says your maximum stile size is 6 inches. Please enter a valid stile width. So it will not let me put in values. If I write the rules properly, it will not let me put in the values that cannot be part of the product, cannot be made. Take that back down to 6 inches. Is that resonating? Is that helpful to see and understand?
Yeah, definitely.
Does your spreadsheet, I'm sure your spreadsheet probably does similar things. It won't let you put in crazy numbers.
Well, not so much on the spreadsheet, but when we on the prep or estimating tool, there's limitations and things like that that are drawn in as well.
Logic in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I want to add some hinges to this door, and we're doing pretty good. We got 3 hinges. It drew my 3 hinges over here. It did the math. It says, okay, 3 hinges on an 80-inch tall door would go here, here, and here. Let's do the math and let's draw them in here. If I change things, if I say I want 4 hinges, then it does the math for 4 hinges. And let's say behind this hinge here at 63.4 inches, we know that there's an obstacle. So we can't have that at 63 inches. That needs to be at 68 inches. We can change those things on the fly, and it changes my drawing. So this, you can see, is a completely different rule set than a window. It's how you want it to be constructed. Questions about that? Now, how many times when, let me ask if this happens in your organization, does the customer just buy one window, or do they sometimes buy 20?
Kind of a single type, you mean?
Of the same kind of window, you mean?
Let's say when a single quote. In a quote, do you sometimes have to put a quote together for 20 windows, 20 line items, or whatever?
But are they all different dimensions, you mean?
They can be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. So I need to add more doors to this quote. I could configure another one and another one and another one, but like what happens if they want 20 doors? I can do this a little faster. Here's this, it's all rapid entry. So here I can say maple, sable, square panel, square door, 30 inches wide, 80 inches tall, raised panel, etc. And I click add items. Everything flickers and flashes, but it does not launch the configurator because it did it behind the scenes. And the next door needs to be 32 inches, add that one. And the next door needs to be 34 inches, add that one. One more door for 36 inches, add that one.
So
and
one
very rapid. Yes, go ahead.
No, Tim, keep being rapid. I'll talk in a sec.
Now, let's go look at what we got in our quote. I'm going to click to go look at the quote. As you can see the line items here. Look at all this stuff I put in this quote now. A half vent below window, a casement triple window, and several doors. All successfully configured with their prices, stacked up pretty and nice in my quote. I'm going to make some changes here in a second, but let me open it for Shelley. What'd you have to say?
Yes, so folks, I just wanted to make sure, one of the things we try to do at Infor is we try to make our systems look a lot alike, so you can't always tell when you go from one to the other. And so, for example, Tim is in our advanced quoting application. This is not back-end ERP. So even though it's using the configurator, the same configurator in ERP or here, this is actually the quoting application. So this is an example of where Infor has built industry-specific micro-vertical types of functionality. And in this particular case, I won't say fenestration again. I'll say for the window and door industry. So I want to make sure that you understand that this is something that we offer that's in many cases unique to other ERP vendors.
Yep. And along that same point, if I'm not in the ERP right now, then, if Dan's just kicking the tires here and I'm just putting together a quote that he may or may not complete, he may walk away. I don't need to be clogging up my ERP system with details and data that are not turning into orders. All right. Questions at this point? We okay?
Sure. Hey, so if you were looking at those doors there, and let's say you decided to change from a maple to an oak door, you thought that all those doors should be changed. How would you do that? Is there a way to accomplish that?
Shelley, we gotta give him $20. That's exactly.
Ron, I think he gets an Infor shirt.
Yes, I can change it.
You're the straight man.
That's exactly why I deliberately added a bunch of doors in here, because I want to show how I can do rapid change. So I can inspect a little bit. I can expand each of my lines here. I can see my half vent below. I don't know why my picture is so small, but we would adjust that if this was in production. But you can see I can still see the description. I can still see the options that I gave and a picture of the thing. I can come down here to my casement triple. I'm getting information about these. Any of these line items, they're all here. And exactly like you said, the customer wants to change their mind. All these doors, if I expand them out, you can see I made them maple wood with the sable stain, and they decided, and Dan's decided he's changing his mind. He wants to make those oak doors. First of all, if he's changing his mind once, he might change his mind again. So I'm going to make a fresh version. I'm going to version up. Where it says this is a version 1 quote, I can click here where it says more and create a version of this quote. And what that does is it's going to make a new version 2. So if he changes his mind back, I can always go back to the original. I'm going to go here where it says more again. I want to choose rapid change. Rapid change on all of the doors. My doors have a part number, so that's okay. They want these to be oak cider. Looks good. Only the ones that are check marked will be changed on only the line items that I check mark. So you don't have to change all the doors. You can just change some of them. Probably a faster way for me to have selected that. Apply the options. They will all reconfigure behind the scenes because oak might cost a different amount of money than maple, and we need to reflect the new price. Or maybe oak and square panel, square top doors are not an option that you can get. But they all came back successfully, so I'm in good shape. When I go back and look at my quote, all my doors are oak cider. We good? Questions about that?
Great.
Is that helpful?
Can you click on all at the same time? I mean, on.
Update all at the same time?
Yes.
You just did that.
No, I mean, all items, every item in the whole quote.
How do you
Yeah.
How
I might have, what did I do? Maybe I got to see. I thought it usually defaulted to turn them on. Let me go check again, see if that button is there. Come on.
The answer is yes, but he'll show you.
If I change it again, there it was. Select all and deselect all. Yep, right there. So if I want to change them all, he changes his mind again. This time he wants hickory. Notice it's telling me that hickory doesn't have a certain, there's a certain stain that it didn't like. So it wants me to change, I'll make it natural. And yes, I can select them all at the same time.
So it's telling you whenever you make a mistake to fix it.
I wish I had that.
It's not doing it.
More than just configure your windows, I'm sure.
A little heads up would have been nice.
Yeah.
It's not doing it right now, but I'm not sure why. Maybe I've done something that I'm not expecting. Maybe I've put a limitation on it somewhere behind the scenes. I'm not sure why, but yes, typically I'd be able to select all. I don't know why it's not doing it right now, but it is there. Sorry about that. I'll go back to the quote. I won't make a change to it this time. We'll just keep them oak for now. Okay.
So, and then, sorry to interrupt there. In this
Yes.
case, you're selecting one specific type of product, but say you had multiple different models that were made out of the same material. Is it also possible to rapid change those?
Yes, what we have, there's the select all work. Maybe I just didn't give it enough time. So like you're saying all the windows have frames, but they might be different products and models, and you need to change the wood type for all the frames, right?
Right.
Yes. Yes, you can do that. It doesn't necessarily, those options that allow rapid change, there's two different kinds. There's what they call global options, and there are product-specific options. And you can, if the frame is global, you can change it through global options, yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. Things are looking okay. We got a price over here of $5,891. How did we come up with that price? Well, it's adding up the items that came from the configurator in this case. But that's not necessarily the price that's being sold to Dan. So if I click Edit Pricing Details, you can see that maybe I can manipulate this a little bit. 58.91 is what came from the configurator, which we're calling the MSRP. But you can see that here's some fields now for a markup and a discount and some adjustments for taxes and labor and shipping and handling and other things. And it gives us a worksheet where I can say, all right, well, as a field rep, I need to make a profit, so I'm going to make a 30% upcharge on this. I don't know whether your field reps are considered independent or not, but we have functionality in here that can allow for that if necessary. And then I can even put in here a discount. Maybe I'll say we're going to offer a 10% discount on these doors, and windows. You can see that as I do these things, it's going to adjust my prices.
A bit of an accounting question here, but one of the
Yep.
challenges we have with our current system is it applies tax at the document level, not the line level. So we have a line item that doesn't have PST. Our system is 12% tax or 7, or pardon me, or 5, right? Instead of, say, there's a few labor items that should be 5%, other ones should be 2 taxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you get the gist of my question? Like, our current system applies at the document level. Does the configurator apply it at the line level?
I'm going to check. Here, tax is at the overall quote level. So I can put tax in here that'll affect every item on the quote. Up here, there's a button that says Adjust Line Pricing. I'm going to click that. It's showing that, and you can see I can change, for each individual line, I can change the quantity, markup, discount, selling price. I'm not seeing a column in there for tax. Let's expand one out and see what it says.
So basically, the configurator is assuming we're just product and not potentially services in there.
In this case, yes, but I can add services as another line item to the quote.
If I can interject,
but the service may attract a different tax, is what where I'm driving at.
You could create a rule set to define the tax at the line level.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be defined by you, basically,
Right.
for the setup.
Okay, that's the correct answer.
All right. Let me go out of line pricing, look at the overall quote pricing. I'm getting a little caution thing here that says, hey, the effective discount exceeded the threshold. Kindly submit for approval. I tried to put in a 10% discount on this particular quote, and I'm getting flagged. I don't have authority to put a discount on this quote, but maybe my manager does. So I was being prompted now, if I wanted to go through this exercise, I could submit this for approval, which would then it would close out, not close, but it would lock up this quote temporarily and pack it all up and send a link to my manager or whoever it is that's specified. I beg pardon?
I said until you get the green light.
Until you get the green light, right. And so if this needs to go up to Shelley
hold on a
for
second.
approval.
If you're using event handlers or workflow,
Yeah.
you wouldn't even need to submit. It would already be over there, right?
Submit, if I'm telling it I want 10%.
If workflow is set up, if event handlers are set up to trigger my boss when I'm quoting, whatever that is, a discount exceeding, it would have done it automatically without even me knowing it.
Yes, it will know who to go to. I have to tell it, okay, you know what? I want to submit this. I want to ask for permission to get this 10%, so I can click this button and it'll go.
Sure.
It's not just going to go right now. But then when I do that, you would have specified, okay, for discount approvals, it needs to go to Shelley and then Ron, and then it can come back. And if Shelley and Ron approve it, then it can be discounted.
Yep,
You guys
that's what I
specify
thought.
what that workflow is.
And the workflow is defined by you.
Yes. Not workflows defined by Initech.
Correct, the client. That's what I meant.
Yes,
by you.
the client. When you said
I was
you,
looking
I
at
was
them when I-
I'm not going to mess with that right now. I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to take that back down to 0 discount just for the sake of our story here. I'm sorry, Dan, you don't get a discount today. I'm going to go back to my line items. But Dan does say, all right, let me take something back with me. Give me something that I can take back to the boss so he can make the purchasing decision as to whether we're getting all these things or not. So I'm going to come up here where it says print, and I'm going to generate a document. Asks me, what do you want in this document? You want to show the pricing information, the line details? What's your display culture? English? Being up in Canada, maybe you want it to be French today. You can change your display culture. It'll show a French document instead of an English document. Your currency, it's default into US dollars. Certainly that can be Canadian dollars if we wanted to change that to Canadian dollars and put in an exchange rate if you want. Lots of things you can change and what you want to put in this document. This is how it's going to kind of look out of the box though. I'm not going to change a lot of stuff. I'm just going to click preview. Show me what you got. And what it will do is it will take the data from this specific quote that I just made. It will marry it to a template that's built in Microsoft Word. And it will bring it all together into one PDF file that I can now save to this quote, print or fax or email to Dan, whatever I need to do. You can see it's got my customer information up here. We've got some branding up here. Certainly you'd have your branding up there. Quote's valid for 30 days, so we've got a date set 30 days ahead. Here's a nice header page, details. And again, this is Microsoft Word. If you want it to look different, we go into the Word template and we change it. Here's our items. Here's all of our doors, our pictures. Things are looking good. Here's a pricing summary page down here. Terms and conditions. Suffice to say, every client of ours changes this to make it look the way they want. But this is just our example.
No two companies are the same, right? Everyone's different.
We good?
Yeah, great.
Okay. Let me close that. All right, Dan's got to go back and make his decision. So while we're waiting for Dan to go do that, I navigate back out to my quotes. And I wait for Dan to make his decision for a while. What this is going to show, now I'm going to take this opportunity to say, okay, I'm back out here. Here you can see is this card that represents this quote that I just made for Concept Systems in open status for about $7,600, last modified by me, today's date at 3:53 p.m. So everything is good. We're in good shape. But if you can imagine if a week or two goes by and then Dan comes back and says, all right, I think things are looking good. I want to make an order. I need to be able to go find this quote again. And it might not be easily right up here in the top left corner. It might be further down the stack. So to be able to find my quotes, we have tools at the top. I can do a search for a word in here. I can filter by criteria. I'm not going to go into this in a lot of details. I think we all understand, what filtering and searching kind of is like. But just to show you, we have this functionality to find quotes. Find it by the date created. Find it by a status. Is it open? Is it partially ordered? Whatever. Sort it by ascending orders and descending orders based upon quote numbers, opportunities, modified dates. Even change the view if I want from a card view to a grid view. And a grid view might look a little bit more like a table that you're used to, so I can find the things that I'm looking for. It's very easy to get back to your quotes. We good on that? Questions?
Yeah, it's good. If somewhere along the way somebody was stuck on something, how would like a CSR assist in that? Would they be looking at is there a way to view that, or
Stuck on.
let's say they're stuck on on a particular model, and if they're saying, oh, let's say they're doing a configuration and they don't know how to do something,
Yes.
maybe an option they can't find. How do they?
Yes.
How would they get assistance for that?
Yes, good question. So you can have CSRs have rights called on behalf of. And when they log in, they can operate on behalf of whoever it is that they're trying to help. So they would then in the system sort of be a doppelganger. I don't know what the right word is, but they would be in there and they could open up the quotes. So if, Ron calls up and says, hey, I'm having a hard time with this quote, the CSR can log in on behalf of Ron and say, oh, I see this. Is this the quote you made yesterday? Sure, let me open that up for you. And they can walk through it, fix it, and if necessary, even place the quote as an order in Ron's name. So Ron still gets his commission. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Called on behalf of. That's not the only way that you can get in and help see somebody with their quotes. For example, you can have it that supervisors can see all their sales reps' quotes, but the sales reps can only see their own quotes. And if a supervisor needs to go in and look at stuff and change stuff, they can do so. Those are different ways too.
Okay.
So I went and opened this quote back up again. If Dan wants to make some changes, I can version it up some more. Let's say Dan does want to make some changes. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to make another version of this quote. He says, I need to take a couple of those doors out. I don't want all those doors, so can you take a couple of those doors out? And I go over here and I click here to remove this door. There it is, remove this door. And then I go over here to remove this one, and I realize right after I do it, I just accidentally deleted the casement window. It wasn't the door, it was the casement window. I don't remember even what that said. I don't remember what he was asking for, and I just deleted it. I can go back up here where it says version 3, go back to version 2, where I started from, and it's back again. So that's what versioning is for, helping keep track of that kind of stuff. And instead of deleting it, maybe he wants to change it, I can just go drop it down, click change options, and it goes right back into the configurator where it left off if I need to make some changes. The width, transom location is not full, it's centered, which looks very cute there. Oh, too many hubs. Nah, we're getting the idea. I'm getting too fancy. And apparently our drawing is not very good with, we have a little flaw in there, but we get the idea. I can make changes. I click finish and it updates everything. Okay. Dan is satisfied. He wants to take this thing. He's like, all right, we're good. I'm ready to put this in as an order. I have two buttons down here in the bottom right corner that say convert to order and partial order. What do you think partial order does for me as opposed to convert to order?
Allows you to select the lines.
Yes, exactly. If Dan says, I'll take the windows today, I'll take the doors next week, I can start a partial order and order only some of it right now with these selections. Nice feature. But in this case, just for the sake of time, I'm just going to click convert to order. Do you want to convert this quote to an order? Yes, I do. And everything kind of flickers, but doesn't look like a whole lot happens. But within the system, it changes it to an order. It has not yet passed it to ERP, but it becomes an order in the system. So we get a new ID number. There it goes. A new ID. Now it's an order. Versions are gone. This is helpful for reporting, and it's also helpful if I need to trigger workflow at this stage. Maybe we didn't need to bother with workflow at the quoting stage, but once it gets serious, we need to push this through maybe financial approval or something like that. And then the button changes down here. Instead of convert to order, it's place order, which I'm going to click. Order submitted. Your order's been successfully submitted. The status of the quote from which you created the order has been changed, and all the other open versions were closed. Good to know. So from my perspective as a field rep, I'm happy. I've got order confirmation. It's its submitted status. I have an order number. I have a link back to my quote if I need to go back and look at the quote again. And if I do go back and look at my quotes, I can see here are 3 quotes for Concept Systems, version 1 and 2 and 3. Excuse me. Notice that only one of them is in ordered status. The other 2 are closed. Why did it close those 2 versions? Because we don't want to accidentally submit another version of the same quote and make a mess, because then we would have duplicates and one of them's wrong. That makes sense.
Can I create a new quote based on a closed order? Let's say
Yes, you
if
can.
the client comes, orders only from previously quoted 10 items queue, and 6 months later he comes and wanna order the other 8 ones. Instead of creating a new quote with all the items, can I create a new quote from a previous one or from a closed order?
Absolutely, you can. So on any of these orders, and I happen to be looking at the orders right now. Here's the order I just submitted. You can see that there's action buttons on every one of them. And under those action buttons, I can open it, copy it, print it, delete it, or export it. Let's say I copy it. It's going to make a fresh new copy of that order and open it up for me, and I'm back in business.
Can we change who the customer is?
And then you change who the customer is, sure.
Yeah. 'Cause that happens like often where they may, I've seen that where they start with, say, the homeowner, and then eventually it becomes the contractor.
Right.
So if you change that halfway through a quote or just at the beginning?
Yep. I just changed the customer information now to Acme Widgets. And by the way, over here,
As you start a new one, let's say I started one in the homeowner's name a week ago, and then
Yeah.
the homeowner says, I want this built in my contract a week later. Are we copying that to a new quote, or are we taking the existing quote and updating the customer?
you can do it either way you want.
Either
Depends
way,
on what
yeah.
stage it might be in.
Probably you copy
Mm-hmm.
it. Yeah, the record quote.
Yeah.
Right,
So
yeah.
as soon as the quote then.
Or you can make a
Yeah,
new version of it.
Just to confirm that, Tim, so like if we're in an open state right now, right? This is no different than an order that we've quoted. We could just go in and change the customer to something else and not create another order if we didn't want to.
Correct. Yeah, you
Or
can
another
change the
quote.
customer at any time, at the quote stage or the order stage. You can make a new version and change the
Yeah.
customer in version 2, you know, so if you wanted to keep a track of the original customer. If you make a copy, that's different from a version. A copy is its own standalone quote or order that has no connection anymore to where it originated from. If you make a new version, then they're tied together like brothers.
Perfect, thank you.
Just to share, there's details that are often part of a quote. So if I look at my header details, you can see this is places where I can put the contact information, the ship to information. I can put in here my PO number, so how they're going to pay for it. The status changes, the currency, the shipping details, the payment details, all the stuff that you kind of expect to be part of a quote is under the quote header or order header, whichever the case may be. Okay? So there's our process from starting the quote, fleshing it out, configuring products, generating a proposal, and ultimately placing the order. You saw it all from the front end. You didn't see anything hit the back end at this time. Are there any questions about the front, about everything that I've shown so far in the front end? Are we doing okay?
So yeah, just a really minor question, but so if your customer came from your CRM and then you push to an order, does that automatically create a customer in CloudSuite, or is it that separate step, or?
There would be, you guys would have to set up where is your one source of truth, your place where your data is pristine, and everything else, and it pushes out from there to everything else. Most of the time what we see is people consider CSI to be generally their customer source of truth, and it pushes down to CPQ. Now, if you have dealers in the field who enter customers into CPQ, we can either write a process that feeds it back upline, or it just stays only in CPQ.
Are there any flags, so that letter is generated in Word, and it says the quote is valid for 30 days. So if the CSR goes in there and it's 40 days, is there any flag that says the quote is past date or invalid?
Absolutely.
Yep. So there is...
Folks, did I miss what CRM you were using or considering using?
They're considering using CloudSuite CRM.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
They currently use SalesLogix.
Oh, okay.
There is a status on every quote. And you can see here, this is ordered, closed, closed, open, open, open. You can have it, and I think the way it works out of the box is after the time period, I think that automatically changes to say expired. But you guys can manipulate how you want that to work. But typically it will show the quote or the order as expired after its expiration date. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You can then go find those based upon status. And for some reason, I'm not seeing expired in there, but, oh, there it is, expired. And, or you can also have triggers that every day it's going to send you an email about your expired quotes, or you can even have those show up in your homepage where you can have your task lists and your other details show your expired quotes, things like that.
There obviously must be something that would show an expected gross margin on the job.
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you see how that looks like?
Yes, you can have it. Let me think where that is. That might have been, let me go open one of these quotes that, former quote. Pricing details.
Gross margin on the quote.
Third, just line pricing.
Well, would it be there because is that connected to your actual material cost?
Everything.
It's all one from.
Okay.
Does it all.
It can go find that. I think in this case, since I'm not going back and looking up the costs, it's not showing me a margin calculation, but you can tie that into your cost structure, cost analysis, and pull that in, and you can show that if you so wish.
Yeah.
It gets tricky though. You don't necessarily, you don't want to show margin percentages to maybe the field reps, you know, or put that someplace where the customer can see it.
Yeah, so it depends on their past, who's logging in.
Yeah, they're
What they can see and what they can't see.
Yeah.
Possible to create different type of orders. I mean, right now we have production orders for our products, for windows and doors, and we have work orders for parts. We have service orders.
Yes to all three.
Maybe service orders would be done through the configurator though, right? That'd be done through like the service.
It could be, they don't have to be.
Don't have to be. That's probably something
something, a discussion you have to have.
That's part of, it's part of the scoping and defining how you want to use the system.
But if it is a quoting mechanism, it's quoting, and you want that standard look and feel, there's no reason to get different quotes.
Yeah, the installation or the service
Yeah.
could be an option on the screen, or it doesn't have to be.
Okay. I can go in two different directions here. I want to make sure I go in the direction that's most important to you. I can either go show now the integration of how the configurator passes this details into the ERP system, generates a BOM, or we can go look at the technical side on the back end, and I can show how rules get written for the configurator. Which one would you say is more relevant to you today?
Why don't you convert an order first?
Okay.
Yeah.
To do
Convert
that,
a
I'm
quote.
switching. Excuse me. Yep. All right. I'm going to. So I switched over to a system that I have that is connected into our CSI ERP system, formerly known as Sightline system. So I can show you that I can launch CSI. I can go in and be actually putting the order in directly in CSI. So I can be in here in CSI. The integration works the same way, whether I start it as a quote, which you already saw, and I submit it as a quote, or whether I come in here and say, you know what, I am a customer service rep. I have access to this system. I'm not out in the field. I'm in the office. I can create a new order right within the system. Tell it who my customer is. It seems to be yes. So I told it I wanted to add a wood door to this order, and I have this configure button available to me. And when I click that configure button, you should see something that is familiar. It's going to launch the same configurator and launch that same model, that wood door that we saw earlier today. This is all part of the family, you know, so you can choose your oak wood or your cider stain, whatnot. Pick your profile cut. Do I want exterior treatment? It's drawing the whole thing. I'm not going to get fancy. We'll add some hinges. We got $248 as our price. I click finish. Configuration is completed. The tab will close automatically. Good to know. And where does it leave me? It brings me right back to that line item in the order. Job's going to be created. Good to know. I click yes. It is generating right now the bill of materials for specifically how to build that exact door.
Is it also going to calculate the delivery date?
That is part of, yes, that's going to be part of not the configurator, but the functionality of CSI. CSI can calculate delivery date.
Yeah, exactly.
Separate tab. Yeah, separate tab. Okay. Yes. It's kind of like having like multiple ways of looking at the same thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what's happened, whether something has happened. Here it comes. Goodness. Now when I go look at source.
You got to turn the crank on the side of your computer, I think.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, what is going on here? So $248 came through as my price. So I'm happy about that. So it is reading. Here's the door that I told it was 30 inches by 80 inches, which was the default. I didn't change it. When I go look at things like, you know, I can look at my operations, my materials. I'll click the workbench so I can see it all kind of at the same time. But you get the idea that I can come in here and see that there's going to be some cutting and some drying and some assembly. And this is going to be, I better have oak wood parts if they're asking for an oak wood door. So, you know, some glue, some hinges. So it's all there. It brings it all in. The bill of materials dynamically generated from the configurator. so that a human doesn't now have to go in here and say, okay, they say what an oak door, so we better add this many oak planks. The configurator can do that. Sorry that took a little while to get through, but are there any questions about that? We okay?
Hey, Tim, if you can just, because I've sort of learned something here in regards to, as we're going through, what they're not using, their sales reps basically are going to live in CRM inside CSI, okay?
Okay.
So they're going to want to take an opportunity and they're going to want to update probability of that sale. At the same time, that's where they're going to want to create quotes. Correct me if I'm wrong in what I interpreted what I just heard you say. Because what we showed you when you went through CPQ was using the tool to create what we call enterprise quoting, right? Mm-hmm. And that output of a document. That's why we started there, because that's what you need to output.
Yep.
So Tim, just with that in mind, and trying to keep sort of things a clear path of jumping between sort of different ways of doing things. Can you speak to, using enterprise quoting? Because the bottom line, in order to get that quota, we need to use enterprise quoting. We can't launch it from inside CSI. We have to be in enterprise quoting to do so, right?
From inside of CSI, you can launch the configurator on an estimate or an order, but you're right, it's not going to necessarily go kick all the way out to the quoting tool. That's correct.
So the sales rep here will have to basically use enterprise quoting to do the quoting type of thing, and then jump into CSI to update the CRM opportunity.
There may be some synergies there that I can't say I'm terribly familiar with the CSI CRM tool. There may be some synergies there to help keep all that data on one screen, so they don't necessarily have to jump back and forth.
Right, because there's two things, right? So from an opportunity perspective, my assumption is that you don't necessarily want the exact dollar amount that's being quoted or that's on that quote anyway to appear in the CRM opportunity, right? So even if you have a quote that you've put out, let's say for list price, your sales rep is going to go, they're not going to buy it for that. I'm probably going to come in around, 80% of that. So that's the number they put in for the opportunity. The other thing is that then when you have multiple quotes, you can trip all over yourself to go, okay, which version then would I take a dollar amount and actually populate the opportunity quantity? So what you can do is anyway, there's all kinds of things from a CRM and CPQ integration perspective that we can talk about. But if you're really talking about opportunity management, generally the sales reps don't take the verbatim dollar amount from the physical quote.
Yeah, I think those are the sorts of questions I have with regards to, which version is your active version? Which one are you attaching your probability to?
Right.
Which is your opportunity, and where is it in terms of maybe forecasting as well?
Yep.
So you've got one opportunity, 3 quotes, three decision makers that are all different, and
yep.
And so right now we've got a CRM that is sort of completely split from our standalone, and from what's being quoted in our estimating, and
right. So
how things connect.
Right, because I think what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing in the right system, right? So your ERP is really for order management, right? It's an order. Your CRM system is for opportunity management, pipeline, keeping track of contacts and marketing campaigns and all those kinds of things. And enterprise quoting is really for quote management. And so kind of that is very similar from a CRM perspective to what you promote to ERP. You still have really functional or process decisions. So from a CPQ perspective, we have very strong standard integration between Infor CPQ and Sightline. It's been in place for 13 years. But in addition to, we do, as Tim mentioned, you can launch the configurator from within Sightline estimates or CSI estimates from a CRM perspective. We also have integration with sales logics, maybe a more recent version than the one you have, I'm not sure. We call it Infor CRM. We also have integration with Salesforce, and the Microsoft CRM is being relaunched, and that's available this month. But in general, what we do when we pass that information is we are not necessarily forcing somebody to take a process, meaning the last quote that I updated is now the one that I want to promote, and I want all this stuff to automatically go down. So in a lot of cases, it's as much about your process, because sales reps get in and they fool around with their opportunities, their close dates, their percentages, their dollar amounts all the time. But 9 times out of 10, they don't match any quote.
That's right.
So, well, and in some cases they shouldn't, because if they do, you're going to have a significantly inflated pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, I certainly have, as you can probably tell, plenty of opinions on this. I've used all of the CRMs that I just mentioned to you and 2 other ones, as well as CPQ. And so it's there's a lot here, but in general, the nice part about it is that you can still use the configurator wherever you need it. You just have to figure out how much you're going to bite off with all of this.
Okay.
All right. From here, we can go a couple different directions. If we want to get a little bit more to the technical back end, I'm prepared to go show how rules get written. If we don't want to include that in the scope of our conversation today, then we can start to wrap things up and call it a day. Which direction would you like to go?
Well, let's ask, of everybody in the room here, do any of you have experience with the back-end logic? Okay, yes, let's show that then.
It might not mean that everybody has to stay, but.
Yes.
But I know
if you want to do that or not.
You're free.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty satisfied with
The back end.
with the configurator.
Engineering and all that.
Based on what I've seen, I'm pretty certain that we can produce
Okay.
all the products that we need to. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't mind taking a look at
full
that.
review.
Sure.
All right. I can show it in about 5 minutes.
Just before we go there, so, yeah,
Thank
I mean,
you.
Thank you.
we're gonna get a little more technical.
Do you have any more questions before you leave?
Any of your people wanna?
Are you good?
No, I'm good.
All right, thanks. If you do, tell this guy and I'll get you the answer.
The whole about 10, yeah.
There you go. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe you could.
Okay, Tim, go ahead.
How they can get different.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to take just a few minutes. What I'm going to do is I want to minimize everything in here on my screen, and I'm going to open a tool which is called Design Studio. Design Studio is where your rules writers will do their work. This is not for the general public. This is for only the handful of people in your organization that build the logic for the product. And we call them rules writers. We don't call them programmers, because this isn't programming. This is just building the logic by writing the rules for how do you want your windows to be configured. Here's how it works. On the left side are rules that are available to me. I can set a condition. I can calculate a variable. I can show a question on the screen or a pop-up message. And by using these rules and dragging them into this blue field here in the middle, I can build a decision tree or a flow chart, so to speak, of rules that will flow from top to bottom and carry out my instructions. Excuse me. Let me go open the rule set for one of our products, and then you can kind of see what I'm talking about, how that works. So if I go navigate a little bit, I'm going to open that rule set for the half vent below window. It will open on my screen. Here it is. And you can see it looks like a flow chart. It looks like it's going to run down some decisions. It has branches. There's logic in here. And it's composed of these parts on the left. Somebody built this by dragging these parts over here. You can see I can scroll it up and down, and you can see it's called a rule set of rules. Now let's say I want to make some changes to this. I want to make some modifications to this. First of all, it's locked. Somebody has it checked out, so I'm going to check it out. Now I can change it. Let's say after it asks for the rough opening sizes. Here you can see by the descriptions what some of these things are doing. Here's a screen rule that's asking for the rough opening size. I want to show a pop-up message on the screen that gives me some information. So I'm going to take a message rule over here. I'm going to drag it over and drop it under there. Under the rough opening sizes, I have a new rule that's for messages. Now, when I'm highlighted on this, the right side of the screen allows me to set the properties for whichever one rule I'm clicked on at any given time. So let's set the properties for this. The caption of this is just Tim is testing something. The condition, well, it's going to just leave it blank so that it runs no matter what. What's the message level of this message? Is it a critical message, an informational message, or a warning message? It's an informational message, and the value is you have made a valid selection. Make sure you're thinking in inches. That's apparently what the field is set to be. I know we were talking about millimeters earlier, but I'm going to set it to inches for right now. And I click Save. That's all I have to do to effect the change. I don't have to recompile any files or move anything around. Now, the next person who goes in, let me minimize this and go back into my browser. The next person who goes in, and I want to start making a new quote. I'm going to add that half vent below window to it. Through my building products. See, now my hotspot works just fine. I don't know what was wrong with the sleepy server on the other side. I can configure it. Once I answer in my dimension questions, you have made a valid selection. Make sure you're thinking in inches. Pops up on the screen. Okay? So I've got results based upon what I put into my rules. The scope for learning how to use this tool is typically a 3-day class. If you're proficient in Microsoft Excel, that's a good aptitude to have because there's logic behind here. There's calculations that can happen through formulas and variables. To give you a reference point, we will often, during the summer times, bring interns to work in our office from the local school, Ohio State University, go Bucks. And they come in and we walk them through the 3-day class. And we give them a week to play around. And then we start giving them their first assignments and they never look back. So if that gives you some idea of scope, hopefully that helps.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Do you have more details on like how the rules translate to your bill of materials, or?
Sure. So there are other kinds of rules. These are the basic modeling rules, but there's manufacturing rules that help with build of material. There's 2D modeling rules that help build the 2D diagrams that you were seeing. Many rules are not used very often, so even though it might look like there's 10 rules there, I have to learn all these 10 rules. There's 3 or 4 that you use all the time. The rest of them are just for rare exceptions. The manufacturing rules, how you would set up a component in CSI, then assign operations to take place under that component, and then materials under those operations would be done through these rules. Let me show an example. I can take this component. I'm just going to drag it randomly in here. Once I've put it in there, I can specify the properties. What is the component details that needs to get passed in to the ERP system? What is then the operation that needs to happen to that component? Look at all this stuff that I can change and set up if I needed to, not always required. And then here's materials that are under the operation. Here's all the attributes that I can set for the material. And that's how you can build a bill of materials to pass in dynamically. And then there's work instructions and details if necessary as well. I know that this is, go ahead.
When you say operations, that would translate to like machining operations for CNC?
Yeah, labor steps.
At a work center.
Like manual labor or for CNC
Either.
machinery?
Did he answer, or
Time.
you're asking me?
Yeah, it basically does both. It'll actually build your whole BOM from here, and basically based on how you set it up. So what work centers it has to go through, you know, what material, what labor step. So it's doing that whole thing for you.
So like you would generate like labor times, labor capacity, all that sort of stuff through this same process.
Correct. Let me go, I'll open the one for that I know was done, for, I think, for the wood door. Here is the bill of materials that gets generated for the wood door. So it creates a job for a wood door. Then there's an operation for cutting that's going to go to the work center called cut-10. They decided to set some values for the pieces per labor hour and the setup hours, just for an example. There's some work instructions that they want followed when it reaches this work center. It gets some part numbers for the stiles and the rails, and now I'm passing in the details for the wood door, passing in a part number. There's calculations here for the quantities. I know I'm clicking around a lot on something that you guys are not familiar with, and I know that gets confusing, but trying to illustrate that this is a BOM construction inside the rules so that so it's dynamic and doesn't have to be manually assembled later. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I can see that there.
You can see there's an operation for drying. There's an operation for assembly where they're going to glue some stuff together. There's an operation for exterior treatment, which they're going to need some polyurethane. If I click on any of these, you can see it goes to certain work centers. Polyurethane gets passed in. Okay?
Yep, no, that makes sense.
And I know that this might look like a lot of stuff on the screen. These screens get busy and there's formulas. We haven't talked about formulas yet, and there's all this other stuff going on. You know, there's a logic behind this, and once you learn it, it is easy. I assure you, you will be masters at it in a relatively short period of time. I've only taken 5 or 10 minutes to go through what's covered in a 3-day class.
Yeah. No, I get the gist of it.
Okay, good. What questions do you have?
So I have some specific cases that
Okay.
we have difficulty with our current system. One of them being with our frame profiles. It's actually a reversible profile, And depending on the selection of your color, the two different color selections may actually result in you having the same material. So say you have a outward swinging door and you have a color on the outside of that door, and then you have an inward swinging door and you have a color on the inside. Those are actually the same material, just reversed. And a lot of software have difficulty, at least in our current software, producing that same material based on the two different selections and two different color applications. In one case, you're saying it's color outside, but in the other case, you're saying it's color inside. But it's actually the same material, and potentially you could have them within the same model.
Okay. So is that considered a part number then? That it's red on the inside today, and just because it's red on the outside tomorrow, it's not a different part number. You consider it the same part number, right?
It is the exact same part. You just turn it around.
Turn it around. Yep. So there's an entire discussion around what contributes to a part number. If I configure this door today and then tomorrow I configure the exact same door but it's a ½ inch wider, is that a new part number? Or is it still a wood door? What will happen as you guys go into your implementation workshops?
Sorry, what was that?
No, so maybe you have a door portal and it's a piece of glass that you're going to put in a door, and it doesn't matter what color it is. It doesn't matter how big it is. It is a door portal, and that's your part number, a DP100 or something like that. And you don't have to worry about its properties until you go to send it out the door or ship it, and then it needs to get built. Maybe that doesn't work for your non-configurable parts, but that's one of the concepts of a configurator is you don't have to have a part number for everything anymore. Is that making sense, or is that opening a can of worms?
No, I don't really follow you exactly.
Okay. Do you have when you build these windows, do you have a part number for each window you build?
Yeah, so this is like a material, so like at the material level, not the model level. So like say you have a fixed picture window, and that frame material, and you have it coupled to an outward swinging door. They both have the same frame material, but one it's reversed for the outward swinging door. So what is the inside of the material? The color on the inside of the material is different than, it's the same material, but on the picture window, the color is now on the outside of that. So basically you have one frame material, one model, one color, but they're actually two different part numbers in that case. And depending on if you had an inward swinging and an outward swinging, color inside and color outside actually produce you the same material.
Okay. Does it need to have a part number? Or can it be a more generic part number that's called,
Well, for inventory management, it's kind of important that it is indeed the same part. So like if I take my item that has the color on the inside, the frame material, and then I take my outward swinging, that on the model level, the color is on the outside, but those are the same material. And as far as inventory tracking goes, it's important that, and for cutting, that it produces that same part number in the two different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Can I interject?
Yes, please
Go
interject.
ahead, Go ahead, jump in, Dan.
Very often for configured products, you'll have a common part number, and the various attributes of the configuration are managed and tracked via serial number. So when you do configured items, they're often serialized or batched into a lot number and tracked that way. So as you move each individual door with its unique number, which it might just be the job number, the line number, that would be how the mechanism to track if you want, excuse me, more general part numbers rather than having millions and millions of part numbers for every, 1/8 inch difference, in a particular product.
Right.
Does that make sense?
You're on the right page, or is it, or is it like when you're talking about the raw material that you use, that you basically turn one way for an in swing versus the other way for an out swing? Is that more of the way that we build? We basically build the bill of material based on the options you pick. You want it to basically have that instruction saying, grab this raw material part and basically turn it this way and cut it and install it this way for it being red versus it being white.
Well, it's more that, like, our frame, you have color inside, color outside.
Right.
And you're basically there. And then if you, depending on the swing of your door, on one model, when I say it's color outside, it's the one frame part, but on the other model, when I say it's color inside, it's actually the same part. Because in one case, I've just turned it around.
Right. So from managing your raw material on that, or are you actually making that?
It's a raw material.
It's raw material.
Do we buy colors like that? We buy colors like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same material, two different applications, right?
So it is basically, you're gonna have two models that are pulling that same raw material part number. It's just gonna be work instructions on how you're gonna install it.
Or even within one model, where I say on the color of the outside of the model is red.
Right.
But now I have two different frame parts that one is reversed, and they're actually two different materials now.
I think what Jim's saying is that when you're trying to automatically select this material, and you say color is black outside, it can be looking that same. It's going to look for that, and depending on the way that the material is, it can be outside one way or the other. So how would it know?
The black inside is just black outside turned around.
Yeah.
How would it know that it was? How would you get?
It can be in the second window that way, right?
Yeah.
And does it pull the right material? Yeah.
It would identify it to a different sash material, right, Jim?
Because if it's the attribute, or if you describe the attribute, you would say, you call it, if it was wood or vinyl, you'd say profile, and you'd say which side is your color on, outside or inside. Normally you'd say color, this color out, but the attribute's mixed up because it's sometimes one and sometimes the other.
Yeah, it's sort of a difficulty in the current software. So when I have a model and I'm selecting this model has color on the outside, it has difficulty taking that same material and saying flipping it and essentially saying, I know you told me it's color on the outside, but this is actually this material this way.
Again, that would be all part of how you set it up. What Dan was describing, he was calling it a serial number or a lot number. Basically, there you go. Basically, that's another part number for the same thing, only it's a specific configuration of that. So it's going to have that instruction that's on the inside, not the outside, in that serial number nomenclature.
Within
the real part number is the same thing every time.
Right.
It's a window with this stuff on it.
So essentially translating that to these rules, you have a tree for what would be one section and a separate tree for the other section, and the rules would...
The logic is all right there. Yep.
It is the outside if it's an outward turning door, and
Yep,
if it's an inward turning product, this is not the outside.
Does that make sense? More so?
It does, yes.
Clear as mud?
Yes, there's mud.
How do you describe the attributes?
Oh, yeah. I will take that then.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you describe the attributes?
Well, attributes are user defined.
Into the bill of materials.
Sure.
You know how to describe it? There are work instruction rule types and detail rule types that could probably be used for that. Just like I have a work instruction here that says cut and sand all sections to exact specification. That's a pretty generic phrase to say, but you can put in there, you know, the customer selected red on the outside, make sure red is on the outside. That would be maybe an option. And then that would show up in the bill of materials as part of the work instructions.
I think more about the attributes of, say, a material. Like, is color an attribute of your material, or is it just take that and become a specific SKU?
I see. Yep. So if you already have, let's say, profiles that are already painted and stocked with a part number, you can go and, okay, if they pick red, go get the appropriate stocked part, that's the red part, and bring that in as the material. Or we got to go get some paint, get the red paint, and send the frame and the paint to the paint station.
You guys paint?
Is that what?
Yeah.
It's
It's already pre like that, right? Yeah.
Okay.
It would
All
just-
right.
Yeah, yeah. No, they're buying the raw materials already painted or coated, and they're just using it, flipping it around for a different purpose.
Sure.
Same raw material.
Okay.
There's unique parts that go with it, though, if it's used a certain way.
Well, sure there would be.
Yeah, like there's an outward turning door sash that goes with that, right?
Sure, there's gonna be other things that go with it.
So
Depending upon,
if this ends up being the outside face, right, and I need the color on that, is that something go on this to give you the color?
Yeah.
So it's a different process.
Well, it comes in that way, right?
Or, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So basically, you're basically buying this with either color on this side or color on this side.
Yeah.
And then you take that material, and depending on which
Right.
model you're dealing with, you're either turning it one way or the other.
right, but those two different ones where the colors on both sides, those are different part numbers.
They're different parts, but you, like, the difficulty in our current software is how you translate from color of the model to color of the material. And when I tell the model,
Right.
color on the outside, it could, depending if it's a couple model that contains in-swing and out-swinging frame profile, then you actually have the same material with color on two different sides, even though on the model level I told it my color is on the outside, but the frame itself, the color is on the outside and then on the inside in the two different frames of your model.
That's just the logic setting up at the beginning.
I was going to say, so then you just write the rules that say, depending on what the user picked, choose this product or this part number versus that part number.
These, with these accessories or whatever else you're adding
These
on
accessories, right?
So basically the answer is these rules are detailed enough that you can
there. Completely,
specify it down to that level.
as much detail as you need.
Extremely detailed, yes. I can show you some beastly rule sets.
It'll take you
Yeah.
more time, but you learn how to walk before you run, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then the rules are copyable and shareable. So once you've put a lot of effort into configuring your first window product, your second one doesn't take nearly as much effort because you can either reference the rules that were created yesterday, you know, or copy what somebody else wrote last week or something like that. It gets very easy.
Okay, great.
If that helps. Yeah.
No, I think that
I know
makes sense.
easy's a relative term, but you know, you're not going to be going to the drawing board for every single product that you guys make. You'll have some shareable rule types. You know, there's certainly some commonalities between windows. You know, we have a furniture maker, for example. They wrote a whole rule set for just drawers. Drawers. Now, every piece of furniture now that has a drawer in it, whether it's a dresser or a desk or a nightstand, they don't have to rewrite those rules. They can just call the drawer rule types or rule sets, and it saves them lots and lots of time.
Right, so you could create a rule set for, say, generating hardware,
Right, the inside, the outside, whatever.
and then you may have many products that call that.
Yeah, correct.
It's completely different than our current system, the way it's
Is
structured.
it?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
This is more similar to how Window Maker works.
Yes,
More
it is.
flexible. So if you do upgrades with your system, anything like that, none of this stuff impacts,
No,
you know, it's just a
it's not customizing.
Yeah, it's not customizing, it's just using tools.
Using its capabilities.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
What other questions do you have? Try and
So
give them
next
as
is,
much challenges as you can. Try and stump them.
mountable and unmountable parts based on site glazing or site coupling or different aspects that we may or may not mount to the product, depending on different rules.
Give us an example.
So, for example, if your item is over 3 meters tall, then they don't install the top piece of glass.
Oh, okay.
And then therefore you also don't install the glazing beads, and you also don't install
That's just
your
going to be the logic
mounting
that goes in
shim.
the background, the formulas, right? When it's over this dimension,
Right.
you don't get that and that and that. You get this, this, and this.
But it does track them as parts, and you can produce a list of, say, these parts are loose.
They still issue the materials to it, but basically the work instruction would be don't install them, install on site, right?
Package them
Right.
and put them in a box or.
Yeah, exactly. They'd run through a packaging work center as opposed to an install or whatever, right?
Sure. Great.
What else you got?
Angled couplers, so like a bay window, something along that line, that has the ability to do that, and how configurable is that? Because we actually have a variable angle coupler.
Oh, okay. Well, sure, it would make sense. Depends what the client needs, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a bay window example in there?
I don't think I have a bay window example, but
You understand what he's asking. He's asking for different angles from the pieces that are joined together, right?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, you just put that logic into your rules that if the user wants a bay window or they start with a bay window, then you maybe during the questions, how do you determine what the angle is today?
Well, right now they have to do like separate drawings and a bunch of math and geometry to be able to figure out. And then in our current system, you actually just have to like calculate out your exact sizes of your frames, and it's not a very automatic process right now.
Once you set this up with the logic in the background and the formulas for those bay windows, it'll be as easy as you're saying right now.
We've put some other 2D products together. See if I can find one real quick. I mean, it just that does a lot of the math that you're talking about. I mean, we have some I was working on this one the other day. Here's a pool cover, and imagine you have a swimming pool that is shaped oddly. You know, you have these different shapes of a swimming pool. Let's say I pick this one down here, free form, and I'm going to put a certain type of mesh on it, and we're going to make it a different color. Let me continue through here. I'll take the defaults. The way that they build their pool covers is they set a stake in the ground at one point, and they set another stake in the ground at another point at a known distance apart. And then they measure the distance from A to point 1 and B to point 1, and A to point 2 and B to point 2. And from that, they can get an entire schematic of what their pool is going to look like, what their pool cover should look like. You know how much math there is behind that? Lots and lots of math and trig. This tool doesn't care. It's as math capable as a spreadsheet. So we use that to build this little pool.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody remember their trig from high school?
Don't remember high school.
So those are the kinds of things that this tool can put that stuff together. We have companies that build fire engines, massive big fire engines, buses. Can you imagine what governments and municipality requirements are for fire engines and buses? You know, the configurator, the biggest one I've seen, a customer of ours makes buses, every kind of bus you can imagine, tour buses, school buses, everything like that. You know, you've seen me go through a couple tabs here and a handful of questions. They had over 70 tabs across the top and over 5,000 total questions to configure a bus. And it took a couple weeks to go through and configure an entire bus. And they were delighted because it used to take them a couple months.
Yellow, yes, no,
So we are confident that if you can think of the logic behind how your product is laid out, that our tool can help with that, can build that logic with you.
Yeah.
It's a platform.
And then once it's set up, I mean, you're gonna be the genius with the logic. Everybody else are the idiots. Just answer the question, done.
You said it, not me.
I know, I'm a salesman. I know what idiots are. Gotta be simpler, I can't do it.
Or you guys have anything else you wanna ask Tim before we, let him go?
Well, Jim's got a whole other page. He's just getting
No,
started.
I don't. I'm pretty satisfied.
He thought he had another page. He saw a lot more than he thought he was gonna see, I think.
Yeah, no, it's good. Looks like we can do everything we need to.
Hey, Tim, thank you so much. Take the rest of the day off, okay?
I think I will. I think I will. So thank you guys very much for the opportunity. All right.
Thanks, Tim.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.